Welcome to Beyond the Frontline podcast, where your hosts, U.S. Air Force veterans Donna Hoffmeyer and Jay Johnson, will help you transition from the front line to the home front. Listen every other Wednesday as they will bring great conversations, resources, tips, and feel-good stories that will resonate and relate. Now, here's your hosts, Donna Hoffmeyer and Jay Johnson.
Welcome to Beyond the Frontline. It's Donna, and I'm kind of going solo today because Jay is out doing all the fantastic things that he does, speaking and coaching and educating and all those fun things. So I'm going to take the helm today, and we have an interesting guest today. And I have to tell the backstory to it. So the backstory is actually I met this gentleman's wife first. She found me. She works for the VA, and somewhere I get an email saying, hey, I'd like to talk to you. And I was like, hey, okay. And that led me to Chris Amos, who we talked about all kinds of things, veterans. And she says, you should talk to my husband. My husband's a funeral director. And I kind of cocked my head for a minute and I went, huh. And so I started looking stuff up, and Danny Brooks is his name. And it's a funeral director that does TikToks. And so let me give a little background. Danny Brooks runs Brooks Funeral Home, and he's second generation running this funeral home, and it's been in existence for 33 years here in San Antonio. Danny's born and raised here in San Antonio, and he just does this fabulous job of making something that's kind of scary very relatable. So, hi, Danny.
Good morning, Donna. Thank you so much for having me here. We're excited just to talk a little bit about what we do on a normal basis. I am the proud owner with my brother of Brooks Funeral Home, like you said, second generation, family business. We've been in the greater San Antonio area for over 33 years. And people are often nervous about death, but it's something that we have to face and we have to prepare for. And hopefully today I can share a little bit of that information.
It's funny, we like funeral directors and funerals and veterans. We don't want to think about that. However, we are coming out broke as a joke. We have more mental health issues. We have more disease issues. The newest stat, this is just factual stuff. We talk about 22 a day. It's now more like 31 a day. So it sounds all morbid when we talk about this, but the reality is we're going to pass away at some point, and the veterans, our timeline might be a little shorter just because of everything that we've been through. So I have been in the situation where it was actually a friend of mine that passed away, and he was in the military, and I was the one that had to be the liaison between the family and the military. And I saw what unprepared looked like.
It's a tough spot to be in.
Whew. And on top of it, what was really hard, so just couldn't find the will. We eventually found one, but it was really old, and we had to go by that. And we were super fortunate that his dad was the executor, so that was a huge relief. But when it came to the funeral, so I literally think this guy is going to be buried here in San Antonio. And then I find out, no, we're doing it in Pennsylvania. And I'm like, oh, snap. Yeah. And the girlfriend had no say in it. And so we're doing a memorial service, and then we're doing a funeral service, a memorial and a funeral service back in Pennsylvania. He's across the U.S. here. We're moving him. And the stress of the chaos. So just besides not having a will or not having a recent will and the proper information, planning the funeral, who plans what, who gets to pick what. The girlfriend was so stressed, and this is a long-term relationship. It wasn't like a girlfriend of a year. This is 9-10 years.
Common law.
Didn't fall under it.
Okay.
Because there's very specific setup in Texas, and they didn't meet the criteria.
Wow.
And it was not, it was bad. It was super bad. So when it came to planning the funeral, she was so overwhelmed, the memorial, she was so overwhelmed that she just said, whatever you do. So literally it landed in my hand. So then we get to Pennsylvania and they can't make this stuff up. And I am meeting with the funeral director because the family is overwhelmed and very stressed. And then the family comes to me and says, can you write the obituary? I was like, what? You want me to what? And they're like, his mom just couldn't do it. Wasn't in a state of mind to do it. I wrote the obituary. I was like, oh my Lord. I didn't expect to be in that situation. And I handled the reception afterwards. And the whole point of this is nothing to do with me. It was, I saw the amount of stress that they had. And so the whole thing of not being ready. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. Being ready.
It's a true thing. And a lot of people are not prepared. We just don't want to talk about it. We don't think about it. But there is a solution. And,
it's Danny.
And hopefully I can help anyone that's listening and hearing is we can pre-plan. You can definitely call a funeral home in advance and just talk about your wishes. Get that written down. You can get it prepaid. Even if you don't get a pre-need necessarily, you can just have it in writing on file with the funeral home. It's a quick 20-minute conversation, and it saves a lot of time and stress off your family.
So wait, let me hit that one harder. So you can actually plan out everything, and you can say, I want a purple coffin or I want to be cremated, and I want, Spurs memorabilia everywhere, whatever it is, but you don't have to pay anything. You can just have your wishes out at that point.
That is very true. You can just go in there and tell the funeral home what you'd like. Most should be willing and happy to put those notes in a folder for you. Mm-hmm. It will not freeze the cost, but at least it's something on paper for you, and it's something on paper for the funeral home. We have a lot of people that call back and say, my dad came here 5 years ago and picked it out. He did pick it out. He didn't pay for it yet, but he did at least pick something.
So you at least have an idea of their wishes in there. So that's one step. That's like if you're like, okay, I don't want to be in the purple coffin.
I want a Dallas Cowboys.
I want a Dallas. Yeah. Oh, I can't even say that. But okay, I'm an East Coast girl. So okay, so you're gonna pick out your thing, but then the next level, and this, when I found out from you, I told you, kind of floored me, and it's huge with all the veterans. Because let me back up. When you pick your theme, is it with that funeral home, or does that go into a national database or something? Or is that specific to that funeral home?
That's a great question. So ideally, when you're pre-planning, it's strictly with that funeral home, unless the mortuary has different establishments, different companies. But all pre-plans in the United States are transferable. So I get a lot of families, especially being in San Antonio, a military town, that move later in life. I can't serve you in California, but I can help you contact a funeral home and get it transferred so you can get services provided for you.
Well, that's the next level, right? So you plan out your theme, and that's one level, but you didn't pay for it. And then the next level is I'm going to be nice to my children and not have them use my life insurance. And then we're going to prepay the funeral. So whatever that setup is, you're going to pay it yourself ahead of time.
Absolutely. I tell people that's the last gift to yourself is paying for your funeral services. It takes that burden off your family. Your children don't have to come up with that potentially out of pocket. And really and truly, I believe life insurance is supposed to be left for the next wave of family and friends, your spouse, your kids. Your income is gone, so that life insurance is going to help cover that gap temporarily or depending how much long term. But back to what you said, pre-planning. You're going to come in and you can pay on it. Generally, most funeral homes, it's standard from 1 to 10 years for a plan. So ideally, we pick something that fits your budget.
What do you mean 1 to 10 years, though? What does that mean?
You can pay on your funeral in advance from a 1-year term, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. What fits best for your pocket?
Do they put interest rate on it like a car?
They do not put interest. The pre-need company puts cost to maintain your paperwork, so it's a little bit extra. But again, you can pay on it in full, and there's no extra.
And then you just get that done. So, but then the cool part, and that's the thing that I want the entire audience, that's veteran or veteran families or anything, is that you can go into any funeral home, a good reputable funeral home, like Brooks Funeral Home. You can go there and set up your plan, pay for it. And then if you move to Montana or whatever, you can say, hey, I need this transferred to this funeral home. And there's no cost to that. It's just a transfer and you've paid. Now, there's a couple of caveats that I think actually your wife brought up one time. You were when they were talking about knowing your family versus your corporate funeral homes, which again was all new to me. I didn't even think about this, but if there's a cost difference, so let's say the casket cost $100 and 10 years from now, that casket costs I know it would never cost the handle. I know that's the price, but it costs $200, 10 years from now. Mm-hmm. And you have to know the facility. So some facilities will say, I'm sorry, that's good up to $100. We'll honor it, but you got to pay the difference, right?
So sort of, kind of. We as funeral homes, at least in the state of Texas, are required to price match. So if that casket is $100 today in 2024 and someone passes in 2034, we have to match it best we can. Okay. That's a law and a requirement.
That's good to know.
But one thing when we're talking family-owned funeral homes, example like us, versus maybe a corporate funeral home that's partnered with many, example, Dignity is a corporate throughout the United States. Nothing wrong with them. I can take a pre-need and say, hey, this pre-need from ABC Funeral Home is worth $10,000. Our base funeral package is $5,000. So at the end of the day, I can write you a refund check for the difference. Of course, I can price match it, or you can get today's rates. Different funeral homes can kind of negotiate that. More common is family funeral homes will make those adjustments versus a corporate funeral home. They can't make those adjustments
because they're corporate, yeah.
So recently we had one. A family got a pre-need through us about 15 years ago. Well, she had 3 limousines on there. People don't really ride in limos anymore. It's not as common as it was back in the day.
Get car sick.
Well, we wrote a check back to that family, so she got back, $1,500 for 3 limos.
Well, you actually bring up another good point. So let's say you have this prepaid, and then all of a sudden, Grandpa moves to a state near you, and you don't know Grandpa prepaid everything, and then Grandpa dies over here, and you go forward and pay all that stuff, and then you find out later Grandpa paid in Texas and didn't transfer. You didn't know anything about it. What happens at that point?
Super easy fix. It happens way more than you think. You just need to contact the original funeral home with the pre-plan, a copy of a death certificate, and then you'll fill out a claim form just like life insurance. They'll mail you a check in about 6 to 8 weeks. So even though you've paid for it out of pocket, that money's not lost. They can't hold it hostage. They have to refund it. Again, all you have to have is a death certificate, and you get your money back.
See, you guys need to know this stuff, because I was like, wow, I didn't know that. But that's I personally think that's why, I've thought about pre-planned. I'm like, hey, if I could take care of it, that's great. But at the same time, I'm like, well, go to the funeral home. And in San Antonio, there's 900 funeral homes.
It's a few.
Yeah, there's quite a few there. So you pick a funeral home, and then, I don't know, you're at another one. And then what? So the fact that you can transfer this is enormous. And, for the audience, if you have it, put it in a lockbox somewhere that people know about. Even if you write on a paper, I pre-played it, go to this place.
That's it.
Then you can have that, and you can move freely. And so to me, it's just an enormous game changer because we do some assumptions, right, in the military, if I die in the military, it's all handled, right? They take care of all that. Well, yes, but you still go through a funeral home.
You still do.
It's not like we have our own funeral homes.
I want to go back to one thing.
Go ahead.
We skipped over pre-planning.
Yes. And
it's the most common and biggest question. Well, if I pay this money to you in advance, what happens if you guys are out of business? As I tell anyone, all pre-needs are transferable. The money doesn't sit in the funeral home's bank account. It's in a life insurance company, so it's in a trust or life insurance. So if the funeral home happens to go under, which it could happen, your money's not going to get lost with them. That's why it's important to put it with a reputable company and a funeral home that's actually putting it in a trust or an insurance company. Example, like us, we're partnered with National Guardian Life, and that's all they do is hold different pre-need policies.
So that's a question to ask. I mean, just when you're trying to figure out, is this reputable? Because you don't know what you don't know.
You don't know.
Right. So you're kind of like trying to figure it out. So if you're like, hey, where does this money go? What if you go under? What if, we move? What if? And they should be able to answer those on the.
If they can't answer those questions, I would just definitely go to 2 or 3 more other funeral homes.
I'd be like, exit left, and we're not going to do that. Okay. Perfect. So what are other things that you think the veterans should know? Let me just ask that.
Well, one thing that's important after you're kind of searching for different funeral homes and you finally select one, you want to just figure out if they're comfortable with military services. Not all funeral homes handle a high level of veterans. I pride us, we're about 5 miles from our national cemetery. So we're pretty much there every week. We know the staffing and we can set those things up for you. A lot of vets don't know that the military doesn't take care of everything. So the easiest, friendliest way I tell people is everything that happens till we get to the national cemetery, the family is responsible for. Once we cross those lines, though, that's what you guys are entitled to, you've earned. So example, your headstone, your flag, 21 gun salute, the presidential certificate, and honors. We as the funeral homes can do all of that for you. There is never a charge for anything that happens on base. If they do try to charge you for that, you should leave. We are not legally able to charge for anything that the military performs. So that's a friendly heads up. You guys have earned that. Your spouse is able to be buried and placed with you. And if you choose to be cremated, you can be placed in the ground, traditional with the headstone, or they have an area like a wall, column burial that's entitled for you and your wife. A fun fact, if the veteran loses a spouse and they're placed and they get remarried, they will have another set-aside grave for the new spouse.
So I saw that in England, but what we saw was the husband was sandwiched between the spouse and the ex-wife, or if they had 2 wives, like if one passed away and then that was what I think is what I saw more, like one passed away and they had another wife and she passed away, the husband was sandwiched. And I was like, dude, I would not want cremation all the way.
Sandwich is not the way to go.
Well,
but here, you get 3.
I will tell you a funny story. When you were talking about military honors, so my grandfather passed away, and he was in the end of World War II. He was part of kind of like the recovery crews and stuff. So he passes away, and I'm, in the military, and I come home and I'm in service dress and all that. And they said, oh, they're going to do a 21 gun salute. I'm like, oh, okay. Right. So I have honor guard, and this is you made a really good point. You do not know what you're going to get. So I grew up in rural northern New Hampshire. Right. He's already laughing because he knows what's coming, right? We got the militia. So we got Billy Bob and they were very kind. So I'm just setting a picture, but I got the guy with the little skinny ponytail, and I'm not even sure what year the uniforms were or where they came from. And I'm pretty sure they had just T-shirts underneath. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, what is this? And that's what they sent to do the 21. And they were very kind. Don't get me wrong. They were super kind people. And the fact that they were willing to take that time out of their day to do that, all mad respect. But somebody that's used to seeing honor guard and the carriage and the this and the that, and I'm like, what is that? Like, where did they come from? Yeah. So we live in a city, right? And we have the Military City USA.
In the cities, you do get a few more perks. But most funeral homes can help schedule and try to get the original team to come out to do your honors. It does depend. Rural areas a little harder, but that's a question that when you're planning the service or it's at need, it's happened and we're planning for someone that's just passed, the funeral home should be able to tell you what kind of detachment team is going to come out. So you can be prepared. Is it a 2-man crew? Is it a 4-man crew? Do we need pallbearers? That's our job to have that answered for you. So again, whatever funeral home you go with, pick that funeral director's brain.
Do you know, and I just know a little bit because I helped out with a friend's dad that passed away. He actually was at the Hanoi Hilton. He was a prisoner of war for a while. Anyways, he passed away. And I just say this for the audience is know what their background was because he had a Purple Heart and he was decorated up and down. He got a flyover.
Wow. Yeah. If we can do it, I mean, certain ranks, E8, E9, we can definitely get that done for them. With the National Cemetery and approval, we have to put in those requests early.
Right.
But we'll try for anything that the veteran's eligible for. That's why a most important document, and I should have said it earlier, is that DD 214.
Mm-hmm.
We need that early so we can try to apply for all those benefits.
When they're pre-planning, let's say they just pre-plan and they're going to pay, should they give you a copy of the DD 214 or?
We love to get those early to have
like
on
earlier
file.
the better.
We scan it, and that way when that time happens,
just pop it up.
Ideally, before you come in arrangements, we have it pretty much ready to go.
Will that transfer too if you go to?
Absolutely.
Oh, see.
So whenever, it's depending on what funeral home you're working with and transferring from. But if I know a family's transferring, and I'm going to forward their documents with their permission to the next firm to help them out.
See, everybody needs to go see Danny. That's what I've decided.
Come on by.
Come on by.
If you don't pick us, you're always welcome to call me and ask questions.
So this is why I think it's fun and interesting and truly interesting. I mean, we're like, oh, let's talk about funerals. Like nobody wants to talk about a funeral, but the sheer fact, if you love your family, and I just say that in the beginning, prepare for them, get things paid for. If you don't like your children, I have no answer for you. I'm not even going to go there. But otherwise, if you can get some of this stuff situated, it's such a huge burden off them. And here's the other part. And I remember you guys saying this. If you do this early and you're like of great health and you're just bopping along, every so often, what should they be doing?
I think it's good to kind of call every maybe 5 years and just check in on the policy, just to see if you want to change anything. Mm-hmm. Example, that family we took care of, they took off the limousines. Maybe you're debating and you want to change to cremation. We can do that. Maybe you want to go from cremation to burial. So it never hurts to call and question us just to kind of update and see. And here's an example. 15, 20 years ago, cremation's been out. That's no problem. But a lot of the cremation jewelry, the turning ashes into memorial stones, turning the ashes into jewelry, that didn't exist. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people now come back and say, hey, Danny, I've paid mine off, but I want to just add a few pieces of jewelry for my grandkids. My daughter loves jewelry, so I want to get her a charm or a necklace. Well, absolutely. We can set that up, and now you've added that onto your package as well.
They make some crazy stuff, too.
Cool. We're partnered with a Parting Stone. They were featured on Shark Tank. We can take ashes and actually turn them into, like, memorial stones, and you get about 40 per person. And those stones can be just given a few to family and friends, place in a scattering garden, place on the table. But they're really like marble feeling.
But how much? You said 40. This brings me back to the fun fact. Tell me this. Here's the morbid nurse side. I'm just gonna how much? Like when you do cremation, that's how much do they weigh?
The average person's about 7 to 10 pounds. So a lot of families grab the urn or the memorial box and they're like, oh, that's pretty heavy. So it's a little more than you think. You just think it's gonna be real light, but it's kind of funny, kind of cool.
And then you turn that into like the stones or the jewelry or I've seen all kinds of creative artwork. I actually wanted to do it. My grandmother passed away. She was 2 months shy of her 99th birthday. Wow. And I was trying to get my mom and my aunt to do it. They liked the idea, but they just didn't, again, rural area. And they didn't really have a lot to offer. So I don't really know what happened if they just didn't look into it or if they didn't have it there or available. But it's one thing, especially when you live rural. I've lived both. My hometown's 1,300. I grew up on a dairy farm. I had a pet bull at 5 years old. I mean, like, country girl I am. But I live in a city now, so I know both sides of that. And the resources on the rural side, waiting to be buried, and especially location on the East Coast, you're not getting buried between November and April.
It's a little bit of a
it ain't happening. Yeah, you're gonna have a little nice nap above the dirt for a while. So it's all those things to kind of think about. What else do they need to know?
Well, speaking of rural, my mom's from a little city called Luling, about 80 miles east of San Antonio.
Luling.
The famous capital of the watermelon thump and City Market barbecue.
My daughter played basketball there.
There we go.
She played them in basketball, yep.
But what makes the playing field fair for little funeral homes, as in small rural areas or big city, is the internet. Mm-hmm. So you can do a lot of research and find a lot of this stuff online. What I say is, example, with the urns and the cremation jewelry, I don't mind where a family gets those items from. You can get them online. I mean, I can't compete with Amazon per se. Bring them in. Yeah. The funeral home can transfer those ashes for you. It should not be an extra charge. If it is, again, consider shopping around. But I'm just happy to take care of a family. So at the end of the day, it's not about selling those kind of products. Mm-hmm. I just want people to be happy and get what they want. So again, that helps if you're in a smaller area where the funeral home might not have a maybe an East Coast team. I'm just saying the Philadelphia Eagles or something. They don't have that kind of memorabilia urns. Well, you can order one online and bring it in, and we'll gladly do that. I even tell families, if you don't pick me and you've purchased something, bring it in. We're going to transfer it even if you don't use our funeral home. So we do those kind of things for families. We've took ashes from 10 years ago and turned them into parting stones for people too. So those things with cremation, you got time. As for a burial, we went back and we've remade funeral programs for somebody. Back in the early, 80s and 90s, color printers weren't as nice. So we've redone them and made them brand new again to celebrate. Grandpa's been gone for 20 years, so we remade them in 2024 printing.
We'll talk about that because I saw, this is a long time ago, but I saw, and I think it's an island. I don't know where. I remember these weird facts, but I saw this thing, right? And this island, I think it's an island, but these people moved there to build these very unique coffins. I cannot remember. So then now it's like you can, tell me about setting up, you can do almost anything, right? Coffins don't come now in black, brown, and white, right?
Fun fact, our receptionist for over 20 years recently passed away.
I saw that.
Miss Franklin. We miss her.
R.I.P. Miss Franklin.
That's right. Her casket was white on the outside, traditional, but the interior was lavender. So it was a nice light shade of lavender, which is not traditional. We can do any color, any theme. We can even make custom caskets now.
Can you bedazzle?
We can bedazzle. We can bling it out. We took care of a child that had passed, and we did a superhero theme. So he had the Avengers on there. And
wow.
We hired a company of, what is it called? The people for parties that come out in the costumes.
Oh, yeah.
We hired them to come out as the Avengers and be his pallbearers.
Let me tell you, that goes a lot, to bring that positive spin. So I was a labor and delivery nurse for a lot of years. And I will tell you, one of the most traumatic situations was a baby that passed away. It was very unfortunate, 38 weeks. Mm-hmm. Anyways, the family says we're going to have a memorial service and we would like you to be there. Wow. And of course we honor that, right? We're absolutely. The version of memorial definition was a little different than ours, and it was an open casket, and they come popping around the corner, and I'm and the staff jumped in front of me real quick because they were catching people because, seriously, I was like, oh.
It's a bit much if you're not ready.
Yeah, and I see all this to relate it to, it's that traditional white, and it was great, and it was beautiful, and it was all those things. But to be able to put something special on that, the Avengers, right? You're just putting this positive spin on it. And, I've had many people pass in my life, and as a nurse, seen a lot of people. And I remember when my grandmother had passed away, she actually had a stroke first. Okay, here's a fun fact. My grandmother had a stroke on the same day as Betty White. 1 week later, they both died.
Wow.
So I'm thinking they're sisters in some other life. I just said, hey, we're out. And I was on New Year's Eve. They're like, we are not doing another year. We're out. Yeah. So, but I remember when she had the stroke, my mom and my aunt were out there and my dad, my uncle and stuff, and they're all with her. And I said, are you playing her music? Are you bringing in her favorite flowers? Are you, talking to her about the memories, right? Because I've just always believed that when we come into this world, it's a huge celebration, right? I've been on that end many times and a couple of my own. But when we go out, why are we not celebrating just as much? No matter what a life, whether it was 4 years, 14 years, 104 years, we celebrate the dash, so to speak, right? What's in between the beginning and the end. And so I've had a couple of people that have family members that maybe they knew were passing or whatever. And I would say, bring in the music, talk to them about this, bring in the sense like that. So what you're doing is you're kind of doing that same thing. You're creating this celebration of memory. Like, let's go out in a positive note. So it doesn't have to be like, like the warped aunts that go take a picture and they're like, oh, look, there's Uncle Fred. He looked great. And I was like, oh, God bless it.
You beat me to it. But that's what we try to do is everyone we get to honor and serve, it's a celebration. I mean, I know it's hard. It's
of course.
Easy losing anyone. But we really try to think hard as funeral directors on our team to create this special tribute at the end. Mm-hmm. And example, we had a family come in. And I'm kind of asking them a question to say, well, Dad liked the Lakers, not the new ones with LeBron, the old Lakers.
Lakers.
Okay. So they I said, well, bring me some of his stuff. Well, they brought a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar jersey. They bought his favorite blanket. And then the next day I met them. I said, by the way, we can get a purple and gold themed casket. And I know that's a bit loud for some people, but she loved it. And for Miss Deborah, that's what we did. We honored her husband with a Lakers themed funeral. The program, we had Lakers colors and themes. The flowers were purple, white, and gold.
Nice.
They had Lakers cupcakes at the reception or the repast after the funeral. So we really went all in and out of our way to kind of create everything. The pallbearers had purple boutonnieres. So it was really cool. And it was honestly a funeral, a celebration. But it was really a nice vibe that everyone could laugh about those jokes about him and his man cave and all those things.
What's the wildest one you've seen? See, those are the good ones.
So people, not necessarily the wildest funeral, but I always get requests, can I put something in the casket? And
we did that to my grandfather.
If they want to know. But I've had money they've placed in his pocket, of course, notes. I've had beer. We've had weed put in the caskets. So
trying to get rid of the evidence.
Get rid of it. But I laugh. But we have a good time because if that's what they did, that's fine. That's how that person lived their life. So let's not look down on them. Let's laugh and have a good time and remember the good stuff.
Do you know that old-fashioned candy, there are peanuts? It's a candy. It's like a nougat, a fluffy nougat, and they're shaped like circus. They're called circus peanuts.
Yes.
It's an old candy. My grandfather loved them. We buried them with circus. I was like, oh, I went and bought them, and I put that, and I'm like, here you go, Pop. Do some circus peanuts.
A little keepsake.
Yeah, absolutely.
People put all kinds of things in there. So, and we want to honor that, and we do it. And, some people want the notes there, want pictures.
Yeah.
And I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm not for the pictures. We have family members that do that. Like, take pictures and send it to people. And I'm like, yeah, I got those, like, when they were live. We're good.
That's it.
And it's whatever works for people, honestly. It's
get it.
Yeah.
Just don't take pictures of me when I'm in there.
Right. I don't want that. Yeah, put that in your plan when you're doing that. Do not take pictures of me when I'm there and we're done. Well, let me ask you this. When you're talking about themes and, purple and gold and custom and all that, what is too much for a funeral? And I mean in the sense of like, should raise a red flag, like, man, that's a high cost for a funeral.
That's a good question, actually.
Yeah.
The average right now in the United States, and I'm basing this primarily on Texas, that's where I'm focused at as a funeral director, should be approximate 9,000 to 10,000. That's the average. Our starter package that includes a casket's under 5,000, just in perspective. So definitely peek around. But it's going to vary from funeral home to funeral home. So you don't have to call the one that's around the corner from you. Maybe going down 5 miles down the street, you might get the same quality service for 2, 3, 4, 5,000 less. Example, small businesses, funeral homes, independent, you might save a little bit. I'm not knocking a big corporation.
No, not at all.
But their overhead's a lot less. That's why they're able to charge those better prices and better margins. We have a staff of 12 great people, but the larger firm around the corner might have 45 people. So obviously their payroll is higher, which makes higher prices for the family. But I think if you can kind of stay in about that approximate 10 range or less, I think you're good. But I do hear people get the funeral services for 15, 20, I think that's over the top, and I think you should be careful. Again, the cemetery is separate from the funeral home transaction, and that can vary as well. The average cemetery plot is approximately about $6,000.
So that is a hugely important thing to point out, is that you're paying for a funeral service. You're not paying to put them in the ground, and that whole costs you. Well, let me ask this: is cremation less expensive than a cat? Because in your head, you think, well, that's a little urn and some ashes, and that's a big box.
That's true. Cremation is across the board more affordable, cheaper. The cemetery plot for ashes is generally cheaper.
Okay,
but it's going to be a little bit, not a huge, like, if it's $5,000 to go in normally, then the cremation side's probably about $2,500 approx.
That's still like a little bit of a sticker shock to know that, because in your head you're like, here's grandma in the little urn, maybe she was a little grandma, so she was only 5 pounds, right? Little urn there. And then you're like, oh, that'd be $2,500.
But I tell people, and I know it's nice to have a place to go back and visit that headstone.
Yeah.
But I'm a fan of scattering them. Take them to their favorite place, scatter those ashes.
We're
Disney,
getting scattered.
Don't tell them you're doing it.
Yeah.
And, scatter those ashes.
Did you see some of that coming out? Because that's coming out. So
a lot of people.
Cremation is getting more popular, but apparently, like, a lot of people want to, like, throw it in the different lakes or waters. But I don't remember what it was, but there's some, like, I don't know what people, but they're like, don't do that. It's bad for the environment. And I was like, ashes to ashes, dude. Wait a minute.
I think it's okay. I mean, people scatter them in the ocean all the time, and the fish eat them. Just being honest.
We might be radioactive. Veterans that get cremated, I'm sure that now I'm going to wonder if that bioluminescence is just like a whole bunch of veterans that have just been cremated.
I think with all the fast food, processed food, I think we'll be fine.
We're preserved.
I'm not encouraging you to scatter at Disney, by the way. I'm just saying, but take the level of ashes wherever you choose. A park or however, do it.
Yeah.
Again, nothing against cemeteries. They're great. There's a need.
Maybe just spread like a little, like a teaspoon, not like don't dump the whole bag into the rose bush there.
And fun fact, depending on which cemetery, if a loved one's place, like grandpa's already there, some cemeteries you can open up the same plot and place another one in there for
like
ashes.
An urn. Oh.
So you could, and use the same grave. So. Keep the family together. Not ideal for everyone, but it's kind of cool.
Isn't some places they have more like mausoleum, like where they actually put the urns in? They're above ground, right? And it's like a big
column burial or mausoleum burial is very popular. A lot of cemeteries have those options. I think it's really neat too.
That's big, Louisiana, right? Because of where the water, like New Orleans, isn't that like above
ground?
They have to because of all the
they're below sea level. Yeah. So
when the floods happen, there goes Grandpa.
Yeah.
Oh boy,
so they do it. I mean, very different. It's very neat for anyone to check out New Orleans. Beside bourbon, to peek around at those cemeteries.
Besides bourbon, veterans.
They
besides
really have
bourbon,
unique memorials there, the cemeteries. And monuments.
I heard they're very elaborate and they're very neat. So,
fun fact: there is a mortuary museum there. It's a pretty cool tour if you're ever in the New Orleans area.
So does it? No, I'm just smiling because it's such a fascinating. Like when somebody's like, "Oh, I'm a funeral director. I do mortuary," and I'm like, dang. And, as a nurse, there's a part of me that's like, oh, I get you, but then there's another part of me that's like, yeah, no, like, goodbye. Like, we don't want to go to the morgue. Like, I've had to bring people to the morgue, and I'm like, oh, it's like creepy going in there.
It's tough. It's tough.
But, it's needed, obviously. And when it's done well, and you have people that support you, and in our world, the veteran world, to have that knowledge, I think that is the first question that veterans and their families need to ask is, are you familiar with veterans? Have you dealt with veterans? How much have you? And maybe they haven't, but if they're open to like, hey, we can call people, we can learn, we'll help you and collaborate, I think you got a winner there, But if they're like, nope, matter of fact, and you don't know what you're going to get. Like when this wasn't the funeral director, but my grandmother passed away. the church actually would not let them play certain music. And I was like, are you playing Pink or death metal or what are you doing? And they're like, nope, it was like whatever songs. So it is, it is very worth thinking ahead. And honestly, it's your celebration, right? So why not make it fun? Haven't you seen the one on, I don't know if it's on TikTok or some social media, and the gentleman's buried, and he had a recorder or something put in, and you hear, hello, anybody there?
It was in the ground already. Yeah, I did see
I mean, a little warped, but, it's your last hurrah. Like, why not think ahead and go, I'm going to do it my way. Come on, Frank. Right?
There you go. Frank Sinatra.
There you go. And so really just, I don't know. Because there's a lot of us that are like, oh, screw that. When I'm gone. That's it. And I get that thought process too. But when your family is trying to grieve and has to go through all the rigmaroles of taking care of this and that and the other thing, that's the last thing they need to deal with.
I tell families this too, and we obviously know cremation's on the rise, and I have nothing against cremation. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
The direct cremation is this fast food version where you take your loved one, you cremate, and then you go. But I encourage my families, you don't even need a funeral home. At least take a day or go to a restaurant and celebrate that life. Mm-hmm. Have some remarks and fun stories while you remember them. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people kind of skip the grieving process by not even remembering them and just going in and out of that funeral home one time.
Yeah.
So that's something that I do push for my families.
Oh, you mentioned something one time. It just kind of hit me. Was the whole hybrid, right? So explain that.
When you said hybrid?
Yes. You know what I'm talking about.
I got it now. So one thing about cremation that's not talked about and some people aren't aware, and I'm, I want to make it known. My grandmother wanted to be cremated. My mom wanted a traditional burial, and they were going back and forth on this when she was passing. So I didn't know because they were having these conversations privately, but I walk in one day and I caught this and I said, well, Grandma, we can do both. We can have a rental casket, or you can purchase a cremation casket, have a viewing at the church, and then after we can still cremate, and then, we can scatter the ashes. And they both looked at me and they kind of laughed and they said, yeah, we knew that. We just forgot about it.
You're like, we're in the family business here.
So, yeah, for real. So that really helped. And a lot of people aren't aware that you can still get a part where family and friends can say goodbye and do that final viewing and then cremate and take those ashes and scatter them. And that is one reason or one way that it's a little cheaper because we're not paying for that cemetery, that extra person along the way.
Yeah. So there you go.
Best of both worlds.
It is the best of both worlds. We like the win-win. We're all about that. So, all right. Is there anything else? I think this was a really neat topic. I mean, as people don't want to touch it, but I'm like, it's good to explore.
It's a need, and I wish more funeral directors in the world would just step up and tell our stories.
Yes.
I mean, I think we're very interesting. We're
agreed.
We're not all creepy and
You're not
really
creepy.
Funny.
You are wearing
I'm
all
young.
black though.
I do wear black every day, like Batman. But I'm passionate about it. I feel like I'm not a minister, but this is my ministry.
Yeah.
I'm here to assist people that need anything. Again, I would love to bury everyone in San Antonio, but I can't because that would be overwhelming. But I do want to help.
He means when it's your time, not that he just wants to go bury everyone.
Correct. But I'm here to help. And even if with my videos on TikTok and as it grows, people call me from out of state with questions or message me or even funeral homes. And I'm here to be that assisting light. So It's a funny conversation. It's uncomfy sometime. But just talk to us. We're not going to hurt you. You're not going to pass away walking in a funeral home. Jokes. I don't want to talk about death. I'm going to die. No, you won't.
It's not like when some of us go in church and think we're going to go up in flames. It's not like that.
Exactly. So definitely, if you need me again, Danny Brooks Funeral Home.
And we're going to put out all your, when we release this, we'll have all your social media and all that stuff. I'll get that from you, and we'll have all those fun things out for people to go check out. And check out his TikTok. What's it under? Undertaker Dan. I love it. That's awesome.
Definitely check me out, and we're excited. So more fun things to come.
Yeah, this is great, Danny. I totally appreciate this. I mean, this was so much fun, and I learned a lot, and definitely put a good spin on it. So veterans, families, all those guys, don't shy away from that stuff. Like, plan, get smart with it. And heck, we like to do things in style. So why not get yourself sorted out and do this in style and save your kids a little bit of money and time and grieving and all that good stuff. So, all right, everybody, I'm going to wrap this up. And as always, from our parent podcast, Coming Home Well, and all of us here at Beyond the Front Line, we are very appreciative of you. If you like, share, smash the button is what they say. And if you get a chance, go check out our new CHW radio stream. And you can actually download the app on Google or what's the other one? Apple, Google, those two. And you can download that, or you can go right to cominghomewell.com and you can actually listen to it right from their own website. So from all of us here to all you guys have a great week.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Front Line, a podcast of Coming Home Well. Join us every other Wednesday. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review.